So think about the last time you were like truly miserably sick.
Oh, yeah. The worst.
Right. You're lying in bed and someone asks how you are. Did you say, I have a headache? Or did you say something like, I am currently experiencing localized cranial inflammation due to a compromised immune response?
I mean, hopefully not the second one, right?
Yeah, exactly, unless you're a doctor. But the difference between those two sentences, it doesn't just reflect your vocabulary.
No, not at all.
According to this really fascinating document we're diving into today, the exact words you choose to describe your physical state literally dictate how you interact with your own biology.
Yeah, it fundamentally reshapes like the architecture of your reality.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. The language we use isn't just a descriptive tool, it's a cognitive boundary.
A boundary.
Right. Like
Yeah.
if you only possess the words to describe surface level pain, your behavioral response is entirely restricted to treating that surface level pain.
And that is exactly where we're heading on this deep dive. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We are unpacking an incredibly unique piece of source material today for you. It's this comprehensive breakdown of how the English language is utilized to discuss health, wellness, and, well, the human body in general.
Yeah, but here is the brilliant hook, I think. It is structured across 4 distinct language proficiency levels.
Right.
It starts at your foundational A2 beginner level, moves through B1 and B2 intermediate stages, and then climbs all the way up to advanced C1 and C2 fluency.
Which, I mean, on the surface, that might sound like we're just reviewing an English syllabus, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a grammar lesson.
But the mission here is entirely different. Okay, let's unpack this. We're using this linguistic framework as a mirror, basically, to examine the evolution of human intention.
Exactly. Because as our vocabulary scales up in complexity, our relationship with our own mortality, our daily habits, our societal structures, all of it completely transforms.
So we are tracking a journey that starts with basic survival, like literally just reacting to a fever.
Just trying to make it through the day.
Right. And then it ends in these wildly complex philosophical debates about biohacking, human augmentation, and the ethics of public health.
It's a massive spectrum.
So whether you are someone who meticulously tracks every single calorie and macronutrient on a spreadsheet.
We all know someone like that.
Oh, absolutely. Or, if you're just a person trying to convince yourself to eat a few more vegetables this week, understanding these linguistic layers is going to fundamentally change how you articulate your own health journey.
You're definitely going to hear yourself in this spectrum today.
Oh, for sure. You'll pinpoint exactly where you are.
And you'll likely identify the invisible cognitive ceilings that might be holding you back from a different tier of well-being. Because ultimately, you can't navigate a space you can't name.
You can't navigate a space you can't name. I love that. So let's start at the very foundation.
The A2 level.
Right. The source material categorizes this baseline as the A2 level. And I've been looking at the vocabulary list here, and it's incredibly stark.
Very bare bones.
Yeah, it's the language of a survival tool, basically. We are dealing with extreme simplicity.
It is entirely binary.
Binary, right.
Yeah, the A2 linguistic environment is a world of pure categorization with zero gradient. You are either, quote, healthy or you are sick.
Just on or off.
Exactly. You feel good or you don't feel well. There is no spectrum of wellness here.
It's so primitive.
It really represents the absolute most primitive interaction a human can have with their own physical form.
Right, because when things go wrong at this level, you only have the words for common, immediate disruptions.
Obvious stuff.
Yeah, the text points out phrases like, I have a cold, I have a fever, I have a headache, or simply like, my stomach hurts.
Notice the phrasing there, though. My stomach hurts.
What about it?
Well, it is a report of an end-state symptom, There's no diagnosis.
Oh, I see.
There is no language available at this A2 level to investigate causality. You aren't asking why the stomach hurts because the vocabulary for, gastroenterology or dietary intolerance hasn't been unlocked yet.
You're just reacting.
You are simply broadcasting distress.
It makes me think of a car's dashboard. A2 vocabulary is basically the check engine light of the human body.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. The light comes on, it flashes red, and it tells you something is wrong, my stomach hurts.
Right.
But it doesn't give you the diagnostic code, so you have absolutely no idea if the engine is failing or if you just, didn't tighten the gas cap.
That captures part of it, definitely. But it actually goes deeper than a dashboard warning.
How so?
Well, a check engine light at least implies you have a mechanic to go to, and a manual to consult.
True.
In the purely A2 mindset, as outlined in the text, you don't even possess the vocabulary to ask the mechanic the right questions.
Wow.
You are entirely at the mercy of the symptom and a very rudimentary set of solutions.
Yeah, and the remedies are incredibly basic. The source material lists the A2 responses to these sicknesses.
What are there?
Things like see a doctor, get medicine, rest, drink water, sleep for 8 hours, eat fruit and vegetables.
Those are all reactive blunt force instruments.
It's totally reactive.
Think about the verbs themselves. Eat, drink, sleep, go. They are totally devoid of any strategic nuance.
Yeah, it's just basic action.
Right. Sleep in the A2 framework is just a biological inevitability. You close your eyes because you're tired or because it's dark.
You don't have a sleep strategy.
Exactly.
Oh.
You eat food simply to extinguish the sensation of hunger. It is entirely functional.
It's pure crisis management.
Yeah.
You are just trying to get back to the baseline of, I feel good.
Right.
But this raises a huge question for you listening and for us to figure out right now.
Okay, let's hear it.
If your entire conceptual framework of health is locked in this A2 vocabulary,
Right.
if all you can say is, I feel bad, I need medicine, doesn't that completely eliminate the concept of prevention?
That is the critical limitation of this foundational tier.
It's a huge blind spot.
Huge. When your language is purely reactive, your behavior can only be reactive. You are perpetually trapped in a cycle of damage control.
Wow. Damage control.
Yeah, you wait for the system to break down, and then you attempt to patch it. You cannot strategize about longevity or proactive health because you physically do not possess the linguistic tools to construct those thoughts.
So you can't build a house if your only tool is a fire extinguisher.
I love that analogy.
You can only put out fires.
Exactly that. The A2 individual is a passive occupant of their own body. Things happen to them.
A cold happens to them.
Right. A headache happens to them. But there is a breaking point to this mindset.
Because we want control.
Yes. Eventually, human nature dictates that we want agency. We get tired of constantly putting out fires, and we want to figure out how to fireproof the building.
And that desire for agency forces a linguistic evolution. We have to invent new words to describe our new intentions.
Which pushes us out of basic survival and into the B1 level.
Right, the B1 Explorer level.
All right.
This is where the source material marks a massive shift from reactive survival to proactive well-being.
The transition from A2 to B1 is arguably the most significant psychological leap in the entire spectrum.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. We move from being passive subjects to active participants. The vocabulary expands to introduce intention and structure.
The examples in the text are wild when you compare them side by side.
Give us an example.
So at A2, you go for a walk. That's it.
Right.
But at B1, you are working out. You are going to the gym. You are lifting weights and doing cardio.
Let's break down the mechanics of that shift. Going for a walk is an intuitive, unstructured movement.
You just put on shoes and go.
Exactly. Executing a fitness routine, which is a key B1 phrase, is an intellectualized commitment.
It's on a schedule.
Yes. You have taken a natural bodily function and categorized it, scheduled it, and assigned it a specific physiological purpose.
I see that as moving from being a passenger in a car to being the driver.
How do you mean?
Well, when you're the A2 passenger, you just know when the car starts and stops. Like, I feel good or I feel sick.
Right.
But when you upgrade to the B1 driver, you suddenly have to look at the fuel gauge, the speedometer, the mirrors. You have all this new control, but you also bear the cognitive load of constantly monitoring the dashboard.
Yeah, that is a brilliant way to frame it, because with that driver's seat control comes the concept of failure.
Oh, failure.
The source material highlights the B1 phrases in shape and out of shape.
Those definitely don't exist at A2.
No, those concepts do not exist in the A2 first aid kit. To be out of shape implies that there is a standard,
A baseline you missed.
a defined geometric ideal of health that you are actively falling away from.
And the diet language changes in the exact same way. We graduate from the vague A2 advice of just, eating vegetables to the highly structured B1 concept of a balanced diet.
It becomes a math problem.
Basically. The source notes, we start talking about food groups. We separate our meals into protein and carbohydrates.
Which requires forward planning. You cannot accidentally eat a mathematically balanced diet.
You can't just stumble into it.
No, it requires intention. But the most profound addition at the B1 level, the thing that truly separates the driver from the passenger, is the introduction of mental health vocabulary.
Yes. The notes emphasize this heavily.
It's a huge shift.
We see words like emotional well-being, psychological well-being, feeling stressed, feeling anxious, and using yoga or meditation to de-stress.
Right.
This is the first time the mind is treated as part of the health equation.
And think about why that vocabulary suddenly becomes necessary at this specific level.
Why do you think?
Well, at the A2 level, you are just surviving. But at B1, you have imposed structure.
Oh,
You
okay.
have fitness routines. You have dietary standards to meet. You are actively attempting to mold your physical reality.
And that causes friction.
Exactly. That friction between what you are and what your new vocabulary says you should be generates psychological weight.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on this idea of progress then.
Go for it.
Because if I'm reading this correctly, by upgrading our language from a simple intuitive walk to a scheduled fitness routine, and by categorizing our dinner into proteins and carbs,
Right.
are we inadvertently turning our natural existence into a chore?
That's an interesting point.
Like, does the B1 language itself manufacture the very stress and anxiety that we then have to invent words like meditation to fix?
It's a really compelling critique. But I would argue that it doesn't manufacture the stress, it illuminates it.
Illuminates it.
Yeah. The A2 individual still experiences stress. They just experience it as a mysterious headache or stomachache because they don't have the diagnostic language to call it anxiety.
Oh, wow.
The B1 language provides the scaffolding to finally untangle the physical from the psychological. You aren't just a meat machine reacting to a virus anymore. You are a holistic organism.
Okay, that makes sense. You finally have the language to say, my stomach doesn't hurt because of bad food. My stomach hurts because I am anxious about failing my routine.
Precisely. But your point about health becoming a chore is valid because once you establish a routine, human nature demands to know if the routine is effective.
We want results.
Exactly. The B1 explorer eventually gets frustrated with vague concepts like a balanced diet or doing cardio. They want proof. They want efficiency.
They want to know exactly how much protein they're eating and exactly how fast their heart is beating during that cardio.
And that demand for empirical data completely fractures how we speak about our bodies.
It really does.
It pushes us out of the exploratory B1 phase and turns us into ruthless, clinical analysts. This is where we cross the threshold into the B2 level.
Let's dive into that because the B2 analyst level feels like a totally different universe.
It is.
This is where health fundamentally transforms into science, strategy, and honestly, a massive amount of gamification.
The terminology shift here is stark. The source text notes that at B2, the word food is almost entirely replaced by the word nutrition.
Okay, just pause and think about the psychological weight of that single word replacement.
It's heavy.
You sit down with your family to eat food. You consume nutrition to fuel a biological engine.
Exactly.
It completely strips the emotion and the culture out of eating.
It detaches the dopamine response from the act of eating and reattaches it to the act of data collection.
Wow, data collection.
Yeah, at B2, we aren't just balancing food groups. We are targeting macronutrients and micronutrients.
It gets so specific.
The vocabulary expands to include highly specific, engineered strategies, intermittent fasting, low-carb diets, the rigid distinction between whole foods and highly processed foods.
In the language of movement, get the exact same clinical upgrade too.
Oh, absolutely.
We are no longer just going to the gym. We are engaged in strength training, HID, high-intensity interval training.
Right.
We are hiring personal trainers, and we are executing meticulously designed training programs.
The body is no longer a garden to be tended, which was kind of the B1 vibe.
Regarded, yeah.
At B2, the body is a machine to be optimized. You track your macros. You execute a program. You are analyzing inputs and outputs.
It's the gamification of the human experience.
Totally.
You're treating your biology like an RPG video game, where you're constantly trying to level up your character's stats.
It's very much like that.
I think of the B2 mindset as becoming the CEO of your own body. You are sitting in the boardroom of your mind, looking at quarterly spreadsheets of your macronutrients.
And as a good CEO, you are heavily focused on risk management and asset recovery.
Asset recovery, right?
The source material highlights B2 vocabulary like injury prevention, warm-ups, cool-downs, and the acute awareness of overtraining.
That concept of overtraining is fascinating
Why is that?
because it implies you've pushed the machine past its engineered limits, like you're redlining the engine.
And how do you repair that machine? You look at how the B2 level redefines sleep.
Right. So
At the A2 level, sleep was passive, it just happened to you. But the text explicitly notes that at B2, sleep becomes sleep quality.
Sleep quality.
It is prioritized for physical recovery and mental clarity. Rest is now a deliberate, strategic action.
So you aren't just sleeping.
No, you are actively administering an 8-hour recovery protocol so you can increase your output the next day.
Okay, but let's pause here. Look at this from the outside for a second.
Sure.
If you are tracking every macro, logging the REM cycles of your sleep quality, executing high-intensity intervals, and managing your injury risk,
Yeah.
is there a point where this B2 language becomes inherently obsessive?
That's a common criticism.
Like, have we completely annihilated the simple A2 joy of just taking a walk on a sunny day because it doesn't fit into our tracking app?
I wouldn't call it obsessive necessarily. I would call it precise ownership of biological data.
Okay.
The source material suggests that without this highly analytical B2 language, we remain victims of generalized, often ineffective advice.
So it's necessary.
Tracking macros isn't inherently a pathology. It's a mechanism for radical self-accountability.
But where's the danger then?
The danger only arises when the metric becomes more important than the physical sensation.
When you care more about what the app says your sleep quality was, rather than how you actually feel when you wake up.
Exactly, when the map becomes more important than the territory.
That's a great way to put it.
But there is a natural ceiling to this B2 optimization. Think about it.
What happens when you hit it?
Well, once you have perfectly dialed in your macros, once your HII routine is flawless, once your sleep quality is optimized to the decimal point, what is left, you have maximized the individual self.
You literally run out of personal stats to level up.
Yes. And when you hit that ceiling, you are forced to look beyond your own physical boundaries.
You have to look outward.
You have to look outward at how society functions, and you have to look deeply inward at what it philosophically means to be a human being.
Which brings us to the final tier.
Exactly. This forces the final massive linguistic leap into the C1 and C2 proficiency levels.
The C1, C2 philosopher.
The summit.
This is where the source materials gets incredibly heavy and honestly kind of mind-blowing. The vocabulary completely transcends the gym and the kitchen.
It goes global.
Yeah, we are using language to dismantle and analyze the invisible systems that govern human survival on a global scale.
The lens zooms all the way out. We move from personal tracking to public health.
Which is huge.
The vocabulary includes government healthcare systems, vaccination rates, managing pandemics.
Very macro concepts.
And it introduces one of the most vital debates in modern society. Preventative versus curative medicine.
Which is really just the A2 versus B1 debate, right? But scaled up to millions of people.
Precisely.
Curative medicine is the A2 first aid kit. You wait until the population is sick to give them medicine.
Right.
Preventative medicine is the B1, B2 mindset of systemic maintenance.
But at the C1, C2 level, it becomes an issue of resource allocation and societal ethics.
Can a government afford to be purely preventative?
Exactly. But the text doesn't just focus on government. It turns a very sharp, critical eye on the commercial side of health. It critiques the wellness industry.
This is one of my absolute favorite parts of the source material.
It's so insightful.
It introduces this brilliant C1 vocabulary word, conflate.
Conflate, yeah.
It argues that commercial enterprises prey on human insecurity by conflating true health with narrow, unattainable aesthetic ideals.
Let's examine the mechanism of that word for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
To conflate means to erroneously fuse two distinct concepts together until people believe they are the exact same thing.
They blur the lines.
The wellness industry has successfully conflated health with having a six-pack or looking incredibly young.
So they took a biological state and conflated it with a marketing aesthetic.
And by possessing the C1 vocabulary to recognize that conflation, you undergo a massive intellectual emancipation.
You free yourself.
You can finally step back from the exhausting B2 obsession with tracking macros just to look a certain way. You can separate your actual physiological well-being from a corporate advertising campaign.
You basically see the matrix.
You really do.
You realize that looking like a fitness model doesn't necessarily mean you've optimized mental clarity or sleep quality.
Not at all.
But the C1, C2 level doesn't just deconstruct the present. The source material pushes us aggressively into the technological future.
We have to talk about biohacking.
Yes. This is the absolute bleeding edge of the vocabulary spectrum. Biohacking is defined in the text as using science and technology to actively optimize and upgrade the body and mind.
It introduces terms like human augmentation and longevity.
which it specifically defines as the science of radical life extension.
Right.
This isn't just about eating broccoli to live to be 80. This is about rewriting the code.
Biohacking is the ultimate extreme conclusion of the B2 analyst mindset.
How so?
Well, if B2 is tracking your sleep data on a watch, C1 biohacking is surgically implanting a neural sensor to actively alter your brain waves while you sleep.
That is wild.
You are no longer just optimizing the human machine, you are attempting to fundamentally alter its factory settings.
It's the exact same logic as modding a video game console.
Modding, yeah, I can see that.
Like, you buy a system and it has hardware limits. But if you have the technical vocabulary, you open it up, you solder new chips onto the motherboard, you install custom software.
Right,
And you
yeah.
push the hardware far beyond what the manufacturer intended just to see how powerful it can become. That is human augmentation.
It is, but that technological pursuit instantly spawns a web of C2-level ethical dilemmas, which the source material explicitly requires us to confront.
Because it affects everyone.
If we achieve this radical life extension, if science allows us to live to be 150 years old, the implications are staggering.
We have to talk about overpopulation. We have to talk about resource allocation.
And most critically, social equity.
Right.
The sociological gap between these language levels becomes a chasm. You have an A2 population that barely has the vocabulary to ask a doctor for basic curative medicine.
Yeah.
And then you have a C2 population that has the wealth and vocabulary to lobby for preventative, radical biohacking.
Who gets to afford human augmentation?
Exactly. Does longevity become a luxury good?
That is terrifying. It means only the billionaires get to live forever, while everyone else is stuck in the A2 waiting room with a headache.
Which is why the source material provides a counterbalance. It contrasts this highly technological, hyper-individualized Western approach with older Eastern holistic philosophies.
It uses a great word here too, espouse.
Espouse, yes.
It notes that Eastern traditions have long espoused meaning to adopt, support, or embrace a holistic view of the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit.
Right.
It points out that Western medicine is only just starting to catch up to this.
The true mark of C2 fluency isn't just knowing the big words. It's the cognitive flexibility to hold opposing paradigms simultaneously.
Holding two thoughts at once.
A C2 thinker can debate the hyper-advanced surgical augmentation of the West while also espousing the deep, interconnected spiritual holism of the East.
Because they need each other.
They recognize that extending the lifespan of the physical machine is meaningless if the spirit driving the machine is completely disconnected.
Okay, I want to bring this all together with a major pushback.
Bring it on.
I want to pose an ethical question to you and to you listening right now, based on everything we've uncovered. We just celebrated the C1 language for critiquing the wellness industry, right?
Yes.
For exposing how they conflate health with aesthetics.
The separation of well-being from vanity.
Well, look at biohacking. Look at radical life extension.
Okay.
Is the C2 technological frontier guilty of the exact same linguistic trick? Like, are we actually trying to be healthy when we augment our bodies to live to 150? Or are we just terrified of our own mortality? Are we conflating the pursuit of health with a fundamental fear of death?
That is an incredibly piercing question, and it represents the absolute apex of the C2 philosophical debate.
It's heavy, right?
Very. I would argue that there is a definitive line. Up to a certain point, tracking macros, managing sleep quality, and even utilizing basic biohacks are genuine pursuits of health.
You want the machine to run well.
You want the machine to run well while you are alive. But you are right. Radical life extension crosses the psychological Rubicon.
Changes the game.
It stops being about maximizing the quality of the human experience and becomes a refusal to accept the natural parameters of the human condition itself.
We stop trying to live well and just desperately try not to die.
It's a very different motivation.
It's a heavy, heavy place to end up, especially considering we started this entire deep dive 60 minutes ago just trying to figure out how to say, my stomach hurts.
It perfectly illustrates the thesis of the source material, though.
How so?
The words we learn do not just populate our sentences. They construct our boundaries, they define our anxieties, they dictate our actions, and ultimately, they determine the ceiling of our reality.
Let's do a quick synthesis to trace this incredible arc, because we have covered a massive amount of intellectual ground today.
We really have.
We started out at the absolute baseline, the A2 foundation. That was our linguistic first aid kit where health was purely reactive. A binary world of feeling good or feeling sick, restricted to simple verbs and immediate remedies.
Then we claimed our agency and evolved into the B1 Explorer, the smartphone upgrade.
We moved from passengers to drivers, we established fitness routines, adopted balanced diets, and crucially, we unlocked the vocabulary of mental health, recognizing for the first time the friction between our physical goals and our psychological stress.
And from there, the demand for data turned us into the B2 analyst.
The CEO of the body.
We replaced food with nutrition, tracked our macronutrients, optimized our sleep quality for physical recovery, and treated our biology as a machine that could be rigorously gamified.
And finally, hitting the ceiling of individual optimization, we ascended to the C1, C2 philosopher.
The summit.
We zoomed out to debate public health systems and the ethics of resource allocation. We saw through the wellness industry's conflation of health and aesthetics.
And we stared into the technological future of biohacking, human augmentation, and the profound moral dilemmas of radical life extension, balancing it all against the holistic interconnectedness of Eastern philosophy.
What makes this source material so compelling is that it proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that expanding your vocabulary isn't about sounding smart.
No, not at all.
It is about unlocking your ability to actively participate in the single most important conversation of your existence. How you choose to care for your body, your mind, and the society you live in.
It hands you the architectural blueprints to your own life and asks what kind of structure you want to build.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time analyzing the C1, C2 concepts of biohacking, human augmentation, and pushing past our biological limits. But I want you to think back to the very beginning of the spectrum.
Back to A2.
Think back to that vulnerable, rudimentary A2 level, where the only thing you can manage to say is, I don't feel well. As our vocabulary and our technology relentlessly expand to pursue radical life extension, we have to ask ourselves a difficult question.
Which is?
If we successfully biohack away all of our physical limitations, all of our vulnerabilities, and all of our sicknesses, do we lose the very fragile A2-level human experiences that actually connect us to one another?
Oh, wow.
If we engineer a future where no one ever have to turn to a loved one and say, I don't feel well ever again, what happens to our capacity for empathy?
That is a profound question to leave on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep exploring, and really think deeply about the words you choose the next time you step into a gym or sit down for a meal. We have this really strange habit in our modern society. Like, we possess this incredibly hyper-specific vocabulary for almost every trivial aspect of our lives.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like, you could probably order a coffee using, 7 very precise adjectives just to ensure the barista knows exactly what you want.
Yeah, an iced, half-calf, oat milk, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you can describe the technical specs of your smartphone down to the nanometer. But then when it comes to the architecture of our own lives, specifically the relationships that bring us our greatest joys and, well, our most profound miseries, we suddenly revert to using the linguistic equivalent of finger painting.
Yep. Finger painting is a good way to put it.
We say things like, oh, she's nice, or we're talking, or, it's complicated.
Which creates a massive blind spot, honestly. There's a really well-known concept in linguistics that the language we use fundamentally shapes the limits of our perception. So if you don't have the specific vocabulary to describe the intricate dynamics of a relationship, you literally lack the cognitive tools to understand what is happening to you within that connection.
And that is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive. We are unpacking a fascinating multi-level framework from our sources that tracks how upgrading your relationship vocabulary actually upgrades your ability to evaluate your social world.
Yeah, it's super practical.
It really is. We're going to map out this linguistic journey, looking at how the words we choose dictate our behavioral expectations, how they expose the hidden mechanics of conflict, and ultimately how they serve as like a survival guide in today's wildly unpredictable digital dating landscape.
The overarching mission here is to move past those broad strokes. I mean, before we can begin to dissect the heavy psychology of why we connect or disconnect, we first have to map out the topography of our social circles. We have to look at the cognitive map we build of the people around us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at the framework in the source material, evaluating your social world is very much like looking at a map. At a macro level, you see the massive landmarks, your family, your parents, your siblings. Then you have your friends. And typically, at this foundational stage, we rely on very generic identifiers. We say someone is kind or funny.
Right.
But those labels are almost useless when it comes to predicting how someone will actually function in a crisis.
Yeah. They are essentially placeholder words. The framework pushes us to zoom in on that map. When you transition from describing a friend as simply funny to identifying them as witty or charming, you're noting a specific intellectual dynamic.
Oh, that's true.
And more importantly, when you shift from just kind to reliable and loyal, you are fundamentally reclassifying that person's load-bearing capacity in your life. You are setting a real behavioral expectation.
Which brings up the vital metric of proximity.
Right.
The sources draw a very firm boundary between an acquaintance, so someone you just kind of know,
Right.
and a close friend, someone you deeply trust.
Yes.
And while that sounds obvious on the surface, think about how often we blur those lines to our own detriment.
All the time.
We expect close friend loyalty from someone who is functionally just a break-room acquaintance, and then we feel betrayed when they don't show up for us.
Well, that blur is exactly why the precise categorization matters. If you miscategorize an acquaintance as a close friend, you're building a structural dependency on a pillar that was never designed to hold your weight.
Wow, yeah.
Having this vocabulary allows us to accurately gauge mutual investment. And this framework doesn't just treat these categories as static boxes either. It highlights the verbs of movement, the social friction.
Yes, the relationship stages.
Yeah.
The source focuses heavily on the language of movement, like the phrase drifting apart. I find that specific phrase so compelling because it captures a highly complex emotional mechanism without any explosion or drama. It's just a slow, passive erosion of shared proximity when you lose common ground.
It normalizes the fact that human connections have lifespans. We often culturally assume that for a relationship to end, there must be like a catastrophic failure or a massive betrayal.
Right, a huge fight.
Exactly. But having the vocabulary to identify that you simply drifted apart provides a much healthier framework for closure. I mean, it completely removes the need for a villain.
And on the flip side, we have the language of escalation, particularly in the romantic timeline outlined in the text. Going on a date, seeing each other, becoming a couple, getting engaged.
Drastics.
Yeah, but the anxiety that lives in the spaces between those specific phrases is staggering.
Oh, absolutely, because those spaces are where expectations violently misalign.
Yeah.
If you believe the two of you are a couple and your partner genuinely believes you are simply seeing each other, you aren't just having a semantic disagreement, you are operating in two entirely separate emotional realities.
That is so true.
The escalation vocabulary forces alignment, or, well, it forces a breakup.
So, assuming we manage to navigate that alignment, right? Assuming we accurately map out who is in our lives and we agree on the stage of the relationship, we then have to make an analytical shift. We have to start stress testing the architecture of these connections to see how they actually handle pressure.
Right. We move from just categorization to evaluation.
Yeah.
The core metric the source material introduces here is compatibility.
Okay.
Like, do your fundamental worldviews, your personalities, and your long-term interests naturally lock together, or do they constantly grind against each other?
But wait, looking at the immense emphasis the source puts on mutual respect and communication, I have to challenge this idealized version of compatibility.
Go for it.
Because if two people are deeply compatible, does that mean they never argue? Like, is the ultimate goal to find someone where the friction is literally zero and therefore a lack of arguments is the ultimate sign of a healthy relationship?
No, the data and the framework completely reject that premise. A relationship with zero friction is usually a relationship with zero vulnerability. Disagreements are structurally inevitable when two distinct individuals merge their lives. If a couple tells you they never fight, one of two things is happening.
What are they?
Either one person is entirely subjugating their own needs to keep the peace, or both people are completely avoiding the deep, uncomfortable conversations required for true intimacy.
Wow. So it's just the illusion of peace through avoidance.
Precisely the opposite of the framework's goal.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that the true test of a healthy connection is not the absence of conflict. It is the mechanism of conflict resolution. It is the ability to navigate a disagreement through compromise without resorting to contempt. Both sides have to give something up.
To go back to our architecture metaphor, I look at a healthy relationship, one with that genuine mutual give and take, kind of like a massive suspension bridge.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The mutual trust, the respect, the shared history, those are the thick steel cables anchoring the entire structure. But the compromise, That is the bridge's engineered ability to sway in high winds. If the bridge is completely rigid, like if there's zero flexibility when a storm hits, the first hurricane is going to snap those steel cables. It literally has to yield to survive.
That visual captures the physics of a relationship perfectly. Analyzing a connection means looking at the engineering of that sway.
Yeah.
If the flexibility is entirely one-sided, if one partner is constantly bending to accommodate the rigid demands of the other, the bridge tilts. The dynamic shifts into something controlling or toxic.
Right, it's total imbalance.
Exactly. The source text makes a point to contrast a healthy, balanced give and take with these severely unbalanced power structures.
And I appreciate that the text doesn't restrict this heavy architectural analysis purely to romantic partners. They dive into the profound structural integrity required for platonic love, too, being there through thick and thin.
We often culturally hoard the concept of love for our romantic partners. We treat friendships as secondary or just less demanding.
We really do.
But the framework's inclusion of platonic love validates that maintaining a lifelong friend, someone who stands by you through severe adversity, requires the exact same foundation of mutual trust, conflict resolution, and compromise as a marriage.
The bridge still has to weather the same storms, regardless of whether the bond is romantic or platonic.
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting. We aren't building these bridges in an isolated, empty field. We're trying to construct them in the middle of a chaotic, hyper-connected digital landscape.
Oh, yeah. And that environment fundamentally alters the physics of everything we just discussed. We have to deconstruct how modern technology and deeply ingrained psychological patterns are colliding to complicate human connection.
So let's tackle the technology piece first. The source notes that online dating has completely revolutionized access.
Yes, the sheer volume of it.
Right. We theoretically have more access to potential compatibility than any humans in the history of our species.
Yeah.
Yet, critics in the text argue that this same technology breeds a highly superficial mentality.
It's the paradox of choice. When you are presented with an endless gamified catalog of human beings, your brain's evaluation process changes.
How so?
You stop looking for complex, nuanced traits like reliability or wit, and you begin filtering based on rapid, split-second visual judgments. The swipe culture actually bypasses the slower, cognitive centers of the brain that assess long-term compatibility and trades them in for instant dopamine hits.
Oh, wow. So you are engaging with people as consumable content rather than complex architecture?
Exactly.
Which naturally seems to lower the stakes of how we treat each other. And this brings us to a concept in the source that drives so much modern anxiety.
Ghosting.
Oh, ghosting. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism behind it.
On the surface, suddenly severing all communication without explanation seems like a symptom of laziness. But structurally, it is the ultimate manifestation of conflict avoidance. The digital screen acts as a shield, allowing a person to completely sidestep the discomfort of finding a compromise or the awkwardness of communicating that you've drifted apart.
It's an accountability vacuum.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
If we think about our suspension bridge, ghosting isn't just a storm. It's someone sneaking out in the middle of the night and silently cutting the cables on their side of the bridge. The other person wakes up in free fall, physically reeling from the sudden slack, with absolutely zero context for why the structure collapsed.
And the brain struggles intensely with ghosting because humans are wired to seek narrative closure. When you're denied the why, your brain will relentlessly try to solve the puzzle, and often it turns inward and blames yourself.
That is so damaging.
It is a direct assault on the foundation of mutual respect. But as much as we might want to blame the apps for this behavior, the sources point out that technology is often just amplifying existing psychological blueprints.
Which brings us to the most revelatory part of our source material today, attachment theory.
This is the psychological skeleton key for understanding recurring relationship patterns. Attachment theory posits that our earliest interactions with our primary caregivers hardwire our adult capacity for intimacy.
Okay, so it starts in childhood.
Yes. It dictates how our nervous system reacts to closeness and conflict. The framework categorizes these hardwired responses into 3 primary styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant.
Let's break down how these actually operate in the wild, starting with the secure attachment.
Sure. So a securely attached individual typically had consistent, responsive caregiving. As adults, their baseline nervous system is calm when it comes to intimacy.
That sounds nice.
It is. They don't panic when their partner needs space, and they don't feel suffocated when their partner wants closeness. They trust the bridge will hold.
But then you have the anxious attachment style, which is a very different physiological experience.
Completely different. If caregiving was inconsistent, sometimes loving, sometimes absent, the child learns that love is scarce and could vanish at any moment.
Oh, wow.
As adults, their nervous system is constantly scanning for subtle signs of abandonment. A delayed text message isn't just a delayed text. To the anxiously attached brain, it is a glaring siren that the relationship is ending. They seek constant reassurance to soothe that panic.
And finally, you have the avoidant attachment style, which almost seems to operate in direct opposition to the anxious style.
It does. If a caregiver was emotionally unavailable or dismissive, the child adapts by learning that relying on others is fundamentally unsafe. Their survival mechanism is fierce self-reliance.
Right.
So in adulthood, when a relationship starts getting deeply intimate, their nervous system perceives that closeness as a threat to their autonomy. Their instinct is to pull away, to create distance, to keep themselves safe.
This raises a really important question, especially when we combine this psychology with the technology we just discussed.
Okay.
If you put these attachment styles onto modern dating apps, isn't it just a recipe for psychological warfare?
Basically, yes.
It seems like an app would be an absolute playground for an avoidant person who wants superficial connection without the threat of deep intimacy, and an absolute nightmare for an anxious person whose brain is already terrified of being ghosted.
That is exactly the modern crisis the sources are pointing toward. The swipe culture enables the avoidant instinct to endlessly chase the new without ever settling into the vulnerable, while simultaneously keeping the anxious person in a constant state of hypervigilance.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. But understanding your own attachment style is categorized as revelatory in the text because it allows you to step out of this unconscious loop. You stop asking, why do I keep having bad luck? And you start recognizing the architectural flaws in how you are selecting your partners.
It totally redefines compatibility. It's no longer just about enjoying the same hobbies. It's about evaluating whether your ingrained attachment styles can safely interlock, or if you are destined to constantly trigger each other's deepest insecurities.
Exactly.
And that profound level of self-awareness feeds directly into the philosophies of love mentioned at the very end of our source text. Specifically, they draw a hard line between passionate love and companionate love.
This distinction is vital because popular culture severely misrepresents what a successful long-term relationship actually looks like.
Right, like movies.
Exactly. Passionate love is the intensely charged, highly emotional, dopamine-driven state that characterizes the beginning of a romance. It's what every song on the radio is about.
Yeah.
But long-term sociological studies continuously demonstrate that companionate love, a deep, affectionate attachment built on shared history, mutual trust, and platonic-level friendship, is the actual predictor of whether a couple will survive the decades.
I love this framing. Think about it like building a fire to survive a harsh winter. Passionate love is the strike of the match.
Ooh, yes.
It's incredibly bright, it's hot, it's thrilling to watch, but it consumes its fuel incredibly fast. You cannot survive a blizzard on matches alone.
You need the dense, heavy firewood. That is companionate love. It takes much longer to catch fire. It requires constant tending and labor, but it possesses the sheer thermal mass required to keep the house warm through the darkest, coldest years of your life. The match is just the catalyst. The firewood is the survival mechanism.
But the text issues a stark warning here. To gather that firewood, to build the deep structural integrity of companionate love, there is one absolute non-negotiable prerequisite. You must have vulnerability.
Vulnerability is the deliberate willingness to be seen in your entirety, including the flaws, the anxieties, and the insecurities you normally hide from the world.
Yeah.
And it is inherently dangerous. You are handing another human being the precise tools required to devastate you emotionally and trusting that they will choose not to use them.
It's terrifying.
It is deeply terrifying. But without that specific risk, true intimacy is biologically and psychologically impossible. If you constantly keep your armor on, you might prevent yourself from getting hurt, but you also completely insulate yourself from being truly known or deeply loved.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the collision between human psychology and modern society feels most acute.
Yeah.
We have this hardwired, desperate need for vulnerability to achieve the companionate love that keeps us warm. Yet we are navigating a digital ecosystem that actively punishes vulnerability.
So true.
Social media demands a curated, flawless presentation. Dating apps reward superficial snap judgments. The prevalence of ghosting proves that taking a risk often results in being abandoned without a word.
The environment is fundamentally hostile to the one mechanism required for deep connection. We are culturally incentivizing the exact opposite of what we psychologically require to thrive.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now? We've covered massive ground today.
We really have.
We started by looking at the basic map of our social circles, learning why it's critical to accurately label the acquaintances and the close friends. We explored the physics of a relationship, seeing how the suspension bridge of our connections relies on the sway of compromise rather than the rigid illusion of constant peace.
We moved through the psychological bedrock of attachment theory, confronting how our earliest childhood experiences are secretly driving our adult reactions to conflict.
Right.
And we exposed how the gamification of modern dating is actively bypassing our ability to evaluate true long-term compatibility.
We've seen that the connections we form are not just, passive background scenery in our lives. They are complex, dynamic structures that require precise vocabulary to build and maintain. Which brings us to a challenge for you. Look closely at the people in your life this week. Do you have the necessary vocabulary to accurately diagnose the give and take in your most important friendships? When conflict arises, are you arguing to win, or are you swaying with the wind to protect the bridge? Upgrading your words truly upgrades your ability to navigate your own life.
If you cannot name the dynamic you're experiencing, you are entirely at the mercy of it.
Exactly. That is the core truth of this entire framework. And that leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over. We've established that true intimacy requires the intense risk of vulnerability, the prerequisite of being seen with all your flaws.
Right.
But we also know that our modern digital platforms are meticulously engineered to encourage a highly curated, superficial swipe mentality where accountability is practically zero. So if we are constantly training our brains in a digital environment that aggressively punishes risk and rewards superficial perfection, is our digital technology fundamentally rewiring our neurological capacity to ever reach that deep, companionate love?
It's a huge question.
Are we slowly losing the ability to draw the blueprint at all? Think about that next time you open an app.